If you've been watching this channel, then you probably have been watching for the storyline or just for the fun of it. But in this video, I'm going to explain to you all the entire story that has happened so far in the Shiny Aron universe. I guess we can call it that. Well, let's get right into it. It all started on a server called StinkyMP, when Dino had a flower named Dining Table. It was Dino's most prized possession, which later on was shown in the end event when all the players in the server put their belongings together to say goodbye to. Dining Table was right in the middle of all the players' prized possessions in the front. Dino's prized possession being the original sword. This sword was gifted to him at the beginning of the game when he had nothing more than a dirt house to his name. He used a sword to start a village, and from there it expanded to his house and everyone else's. As he was digging down to make an underground railway, he found a ravine. Inside said ravine was an orange tulip on some grass. It was alone in the ravine, so he took it and put it in his house. He used this to represent how anyone can be saved, no matter how deep down they feel. And as the server went on, the flower started to seep some of Dino's operator power, considering it was right next to his bed. And he made sure to talk to it every day. He named it Dining Table. After a hardcore server just ended, people wanted to lower the stakes. Dino started a Pixelmon server, now known as Dino Pixelmon. It was given a main hub and a battle arena, yet none of those would ever go to use. After walking around for a while, everyone settled in to their preferred spots to live. It was Gabe, Kyogre, and Hagui living in the mountains, while Dino stood his ground and erected a castle in his name, deep in the woods at a faraway taiga village. Inside of the village stood one man, who seemed to be trapped inside of his home due to a mound of dirt blocking the only exit. Dino, who was all alone, decided to rule over this new village as a dictator, using its resources for his own needs and gain. This man trapped behind the window was forced to watch and could not do anything about it. This man was dubbed Mr. Smiley and was hated by all who played the server due to his obnoxious grin and ugly shirt. In this server, Dino found a Gollet, who he thought was ugly and fat and named Gordo. But when he evolved it, he turned into an amazing Golurk, who turned into Dino's most loved Pokemon of the server. While this server might have seemed particularly tame, it ended in a violent robbery of many Arceus plates and the retrieval of said plates. After having a few more servers, such as StinkyMP and Dino Pixelmon V2, there was an obvious lack of drive to really play Minecraft. What Dino did then was get on a server called RetroMC. This server was made in one of the beta versions of Minecraft. And in this server, he constructed a very large building and got many people that were not known to anyone else to join his village. It was very fun to look back at what Minecraft used to be. And on this server, he had a dog. This dog was named Boomer, and it was one thing Dino had to worry about, due to the bad dog AI in the earlier versions. Creepers would often get close to him, blowing up Boomer, but after all of the safekeeping, Dino brought Boomer with him across a small part of the ocean by swimming. He came across a sort of whirlpool and jumped in. The bottom was all cobblestone, so he managed to water bucket clutch, yet Boomer did not. With the loss of Boomer, Dino created a gravestone behind his house, and ended his time on that server. This loss made Dino want to go back to not having to protect any animals, to go back to the kind of server where you can roam free without the worry of creepers, long drops, or even traveling. This is when he started Dino PM, a Pixelmon server that was special because it introduced new faces, these being Corgi, Maxwell Sniper, and Luke. While some played more than others, the server lasted a while, and during this long last, the real story was starting to come to play. Hagui was the one to settle down and find a place to live, creating a bar where people could buy drinks. This bar contained something that Dino insisted on keeping, the ladder. Nothing very noteworthy happened after that. It all started to ramp back up when Dino gathered everyone to come to a simple cookout and eat food that everyone would bring. This led to everyone playing games, and at the end, he brought everyone down to his secret lab, and on the spot, summoned a Mewtwo and caught it in a Master Ball. Then proceeded to armor it with armor he created earlier. This Mewtwo would go on his Operator Cookouts, named after the operation that was his summoning, and he was seen as the strongest being in the server at the time, yet the real one was already there. At the cookout was the pool's lifeguard. He went by the name Doug and had been through improvements, going from just a head to head with pants to a full-made body. This exponential growth is what makes him so powerful. Following the cookout's success, Dino decided to drive a van to Corgi's village, sell the remaining food from the cookout that no one ate. This went well until suddenly the van disappeared. No one knew where it went, including Dino, and they ended up going back down to the lab where they saw a sign and told them to follow a maze, leading to a picture revealing that it was never missing in the first place. They went back to the surface and noticed that a mound of dirt was moved, and it was revealed that Doug took it for its electric power and started to use it to form his predecessor, Doug Jr., a Zygarde 10% form who was difficult to contain at first, yet was captured nonetheless. Doug was then going to use this new gained increase in power to temporarily alter the odds in which you can find a shiny Pokemon, yet it seemed that all of his power was not enough for such massive change. This left people frustrated, so in light of this, Dino Knight decided to host his own little event to give everyone after the mishap that Doug started. Everyone met around in a circle formation, and using the power of every player in the server, they summoned a massive tree in the middle of them. This tree would go on to be known as the Tree of Life, and over the next few days, a bright blue lake appeared next to it, with healing powers. After all this happened, people began to lose interest in the server. As time went on, Dino decided to shiny hunt for one Pokemon in particular, Aron. Little did he know that after a month of hunting, he would still be stuck in the same extreme hills. So bored to the point that he created statues of Aron and painted an entire hill with a giant shiny Aron. This Aron was more of a nuisance than Boomer, even more than Doug when he stole the van. This started to give shiny Aron a reputation that was not good. Dino started to despise him, and anything to do with its Pokédex number 304. This Aron was eventually found at the hands of Kyogre. Dino was furious at the fact that he wouldn't obtain the Aron first, and got Kyogre to hand it over. Yet the Aron wouldn't listen to Dino at all. In fact, the Aron was against Dino. Shiny Aron hated Dino. This is due to the fact that it wasn't a normal shiny Aron. It was yet a red herring set by someone with negative views on Dino, made to destroy Dino. This was set into effect when it used the power of an operator, which was given to shiny Aron by Dino unknowingly. See, the ladder that Dino kept near him started to gain more operator power, just like Dining Table did so long ago. And due to the fact that it has more mass and that the servers lasted longer, it has been exposed longer, making it 4 times more powerful than Dining Table ever was. While this was going on, Dino was experimenting with teleportation under his newly found corporation, Dino Industries, and how teleporting can be used to make travel faster. One teleporter being in his lab, being able to teleport one to the Aron hunting location in seconds. This experimentation caused a fracture in reality, bringing bits and pieces of time and space to leak into Dino PM, one of these being the grave of Boomer, right behind Dino's suburban house, which greatly upset him. The ladder mentioned before was placed inside of the copper Aron statue that Dino created while his search for shiny Aron, and that statue was placed inside the heart of a giant Mecha Aggron. This was seen when Dino was trying to use the power of shiny Aron, Operator Cookout, and Doug Jr. inside of a CM machine for reasons unknown. He used the light blue water, or water of life, that was found next to the Tree of Life. He spent days extracting it, and stored it inside of a glass orb at the top of the CM machine. Due to the fact that shiny Aron had taken the ladder, and had more power than him by any other operator, he overran the machine, and as the rest of the people teleported back home, it was rigged to become more than just a different place. They teleported backwards in time, when Dino was just starting his Aron hunt. All of this was just a dupe though, to stall as Dino was not able to travel back, due to the fact that if there was multiple of the same person in one world, that world would begin to corrupt badly. Shiny Aron overcame Dino and took his powers, turning him into the one who would press his buttons to control the Mecha Aggron. When the rest of the players made it back to the present, it was too late. Dino was forced to press the buttons at the will of shiny Aron. After dodging moves, Dino figured out that he could swiftly pause the mechanism known as the Mecha Aggron and get them inside. They did so, and once again, Dino took the ladder, returning to their places, acting like nothing happened. The Mecha Aggron was vulnerable, and just in that moment, Doug, using his powers combined with Boomer's physical body, landed in front of the mechanical beast and fired their laser directly into the eyes of the Aggron, destroying it for good. This destruction of the creation that was made with operator power caused time to start to shift back to normal, and Boomer went back to his grave, taking Doug with him. Shiny Aron was brought back with everyone else to the beginning village, where the server originally began months prior. After seeing how so many past memories leaked in, such as the castle from Dino Pixelmon, the underground bunker from Dino Hardcore, or the sacrificial chicken all the way back from StinkyMP, Aron saw everything that came before the server they were in. This began to make it apparent that Shiny Aron was about to become such a thing, a memory. So in that moment, Shiny Aron decided to leave the server, to enter the meaningless void in between time and space. That marks the end of one of the most beloved servers. After such a great server, trying to top that was difficult, and it was easy to tell after Dino MM, the most heavily modded server, ended a measly week after its start point. When the next server started, however, it lasted longer, yet not to the degree as Dino PM. This was known as Dino PM V2. This server was seen as a combination of Dino PM and Dino MM. The Pixelmon aspects were still there, yet it had a wider variety of mods to choose from, like cars, tools, and even nuclear reactors. This server was more tame and an on and off player base. Dino's base was a tall skyscraper with a painting of Operator Cookout at the main lobby, and under it was a secret room containing an orange tulip. This tulip was seen as dining table, and everyone made sure it did not get stolen. The first event was minor, as it first seemed, yet begun to get more purpose. This event was the Halloween 304 event. This included pumpkin carving, scavenger hunting, and other party games that were played in the middle of the autumn forest at the strike of midnight. During this game, some people got extremely lucky, Gabe, yet the prizes were still below par, almost like they were ripped from the ground. By the end, people noticed the symbols on the gravestone decorations and realized that there might be more to them. There stood a grave of an image of a wolf, one big red eye, and one with a television on top of it. The one with the television was dug up, and all of the prizes were combined to create the revived Doug, known now as Zug. Zug spent his time underground, but seeked out a nearby lake, where he remained, scouting out for any needy swimmers, as if he were a lifeguard once again. This simple life was cut short when Zug was kidnapped along with the orange tulip and taken to an unknown location. Another strange occurrence was happening at the same time. Dino's usually red eyes were slowly turning more and more orange. This was noticed, and it made people strangely suspicious of Dino, and how he could have taken Zug for his own needs. Later on, strange videos were found, and it showed the truth. Dino wasn't the one who kidnapped Zug. In fact, Dino was kidnapped with Zug, and replaced with a copy. This copy, dubbed the Admin Extractor, has been slowly degrading over time, revealing its true form. A gray metal body with yellow shirt, blue jeans, a hollow face, and 4 colored orbs in its right arm. These orbs were purple, orange, red, and green, and these all have meaning to them. Each one was power taken from a source, no longer being used. These 4 being Operator Cookout, the Mewtwo caught in Dino PM, which seemed to have the operator powers due to its bond with the trainer, who was also the owner. Dining Table, the flower from StinkyMP that was never used after its goodbyes, Shiny Aron, who still had some power left after the Mecha Aggron incident, and Doug Jr., the Zygarde created by Doug, or at least what is left of the Zygarde. These powers were shown being obtained when the Admin Extractor used the powers to travel back in time, revealing that it in fact was the one who created the Shiny Aron found in Dino PM, and that it was fused with an orange tulip as its protective casing. The orange tulip underneath Dino's skyscraper was simply a facade that made people think that it was more important than it really was. This orange tulip was still special though. Due to the fact that it was around Dino, it gained some operator power, yet not as much. For the time being, we shall refer to this one as the dining chair, because of its lesser importance. This dining chair was the tulip put inside of Shiny Aron when it was created. This is how Shiny Aron became so powerful in the first place, and is how it was able to escape Dino's grasp. After being revealed to us that the Shiny Aron we knew was made by another being we had no idea about, the question arose, who made the Admin Extractor? This was swiftly answered after all the videos were found. One more appeared, showing all of them connecting. The true man behind all of this vengeance and destruction was brought to the spotlight. The man who did all of this was the one and only Mr. Smiley, all the way back from Dino Pixelmon. He had been waiting and planning his revenge on Dino ever since the server ended, and when the time and space started to collapse, Mr. Smiley was finally able to step out of his home and place his creation into a world known as Dino PM V2. In the present, the Admin Extractor walked down a long corridor. to a house that looked exactly like Mr. Smiley's and threw Dining Table's physical form into lava, so that its only operator power left inside of the admin extractor's arm. He then entered the house to release all of the energy into the house, corrupting the world, letting Mr. Smiley enter. Many other robots that looked similar to the admin extractor rose from the ground as he stepped in, and the stone closed, so that Mr. Smiley's plan can finally come to an end. Finally, after it was all revealed, Gabriel, who had been around since the beginning, ran to the underground cave where Zug, Dino, and Mr. Smiley would be. He found Dino locked in a cage, guarded by a mysterious gray and orange man who ended up being a corrupted version of Kyogre, a mighty trainer, who decided to help Gabe after getting cured by a blue orb. They broke Dino out and found Zug behind the room they were in, knowing a way to stop Mr. Smiley from releasing the many robots that were created into the corrupting time and space to take over every last world. Before doing so, Zug requested one thing: the ladder. Kyogre and Gabe ran to Mr. Smiley, and Kyogre fought him head on. Mr. Smiley's team included Operator Cookout, Zug Jr., a corrupted form of the Zygarde, Shiny Aron, that was named the Red Herring, referring to it being what people thought was the real villain, and Gordo, the neglected Golurk from Dino Pixelmon. It also included the Totem Terror, which was Necrozma thought to be defeated in Dino PM V1. After defeating Mr. Smiley, he dropped the ladder, and they ran back to Zug, finding out that his abs were actually etchings of a ladder, meant to be placed in order for his higher form to be reached, with his current one being V80. Before this was done, Zug told them that he was never a zombie. He was simply corrupted to the same degree as Kyogre, and wasn't able to attain his powers until they put the ladder on his chest. Once it was placed, the server began to collapse, and due to the lack of operator power, when there is no power left from an owner, the power of a server begins to dwindle, and dwindle it did. The server shut down a mere 5 minutes later. Before it shut down, Dino managed to get back to Mr. Smiley's underground headquarters and snatch a piece of the admin extractor's right arm, laying on the ground after his implosion. After the server's shutdown, Zug, who has now turned back into Doug, has reached the plane that he can exist outside of the servers, so that he was not affected by the shutdown, but he was there, stranded alone in a void, waiting for someone to drag him into the next world. Once Dino PM V2 was over, the next server was Dino FTB, which was one of the most difficult servers to date. This server was an older version of Minecraft as well. There wasn't much found in this server that was mentionable other than the Chaos Guardian, being the most powerful being ever, and the final explosion caused by Dino that destroyed the entire town that they lived in. The one thing that can be said is that there was an unseen creature in the depths of the underworld that went by the name Skeleman, and he seemed pointless at the time. The next server, being Pixelmon, started to ramp up the continuation of the introduction of new faces, some being Walter White, the Arctozolt, Splarf, the Galarian Zapdos, the very trustworthy Pura Mid-Scheme Corporation, and Tyler Glev, the Battle Bond Greninja. These new faces were brought to light due to the fact that Dino has moved on from his past, meaning he didn't want to look back at all the destruction that was done. The only thing that shows what happened to him was the gauntlet he created from the scrap of metal taken from the arm of the admin extractor back in Dino PM V2. This gauntlet included each of the 4 multicolored orbs, which were seemingly useless to the public. After all this time had passed, Dino decided that it was time to get Doug back. He decided the best way would be to travel back to Dino PM and take him from the pool in which he stood. He attempted to use the orbs on his wrist to travel back, but it was no use. The gauntlet lit up, and Dino rose from the ground and caused a crack in the space-time continuum. This corruption that was felt in Dino PM V2 was now similar to what was beginning to happen in Dino PM V3. Dino did not manage to make it to Doug in Dino PM, but ended up somewhere in a field next to a broken down house and pool. Dino decided that his base needed a topper, so he took the top portion of the broken down house and put it on top of his current base. After forgetting what happened when he used the orbs, he went back to his normal plans for a Pixelmon server, his main goal, getting Giratina, his favorite Pokemon. He didn't realize the obstacles that would get in his way. As he was getting the proper resources to do so, many different sightings of the number 80 popped up. This confused everyone, not knowing what that number could specify. Shortly after, a power source unknown to that world popped into existence, and gave a message, a warning almost. This warning spoke about how they are forgotten, left to rot in the place they stay. They talked about how they were trying to reach contact, and at the end was nearing ever so close. The voice spoke of how the universe in which everyone inhabited was not the only one. Other universes existed. Many of them had these same exact servers. These servers went much differently though. Lots of these servers were not as successful in those universes for unknown reasons, and this source of power was trying to stop their universe from ending. This barely affected everyone on the server, and they just went on with their lives, not really caring about what was being talked about. Later in the server, when Dino finally was ready to catch Giratina, he took everyone to the place where he found the rundown version of the house, and it became apparent that Dino PM v3 was corrupted. Time began to loop, repeating itself, placing worlds instead of others. This time, the loop brought snapshots from Dino PM into Dino PM v3, starting with Dino's house. Once they got there, Dino's gauntlet seemed to be faded, almost as if all the orbs were missing, or at least shut down. This didn't affect him though. He kept bringing people to his now run-down secret lab, in which he found 3 separate halls to go down, each too bright to see the end of. The first one led to a build created in Dino PM, American Man's Battle Arena, and this is where Dino originally caught his Meloetta in Dino PM, but the arena was more run down, and when time shifted so long ago, bringing the island from his first ever server, nothing much happened to the roof, yet in this version, it collapsed through, destroying the arena. Dino managed to summon a new Meloetta and catch it. They returned to the lab and went down to the second hallway. They came to the same room where Operator Cookout was first caught. There were cracks in the ceilings and walls, and there was moss dripping all over the place. It was not in good shape. But the cloning machine sat there, almost looking unused. Dino used this one to get the new Mewtwo, and everyone then went to the new hallway. This hallway brought them to the underground bunker where Doug hid the food van Dino created in Dino PM. This was very different though. There were vines everywhere, and it seemed like a mess. But even the van seemed to be constructed differently, being a different palette of blocks used to build it. This meant that these snapshots were not from their universe, but a parallel one, where something must have gone wrong, and where Dino PM was the last server hosted. After using the van's energy to make a new Zygarde, Dino and everyone else tried to get back to the lab, but ended up being teleported into a white void. In this void was nothing more than an orange tulip and Mr. Smiley himself, trying to trade his shiny Aron for the newly caught Zygarde Dino recently obtained. He was ditched, and they moved up to the void, and found a Giratina shrine. This is where Dino decided to spawn his Giratina he was planning to get from the beginning. This Giratina battle would go well, but afterwards they were interrupted by a voice. It was the being that spoke out about an ever so nearing end, and it was revealed to everyone that it was really Doug behind the voice. The 80 that everyone was so confused about was really the number of the amount of versions that Doug has been through before ascending through the planes of reality. Doug was furious with Dino. He felt forgotten, and he saw Dino rip apart the universe without knowing Dino's true intention of trying to get him back. Doug thought to himself that Dino was the villain, and that he must end Dino, or at least get the server back to a more stable state. Before he could do this, everyone in the server started yelling at Doug, and Dino managed to lift them all up into the sky, let out all the Pokemon he found along the way in the new server, and used their power combined to explode Doug, which in turn destroyed the void that Doug created. After everyone left the void to go back and play the server they were all in, Mr. Smiley still lingered and saw the crack in the void, swiftly running to the tulip that was there to find out that it was no longer in its pot. Someone must have taken it. He walked outside the void to see that he was in a tundra, the first time he has seen snow since he had been locked up in his house inside the taiga. He wasn't very good at walking, so he limped up a nearby icy hill to get a better vantage point, and after everyone logged off, he waited. He knew he had lots of time to plan for what to do next, and that now he was free, he had so many more options at his fingertips. That's when destiny struck. The sky rang as the words fell from the sky. Regigigas has spawned in a glacier biome. Shocked, Mr. Smiley fell back trying to understand what just happened. He saw the giant beast, the Titan standing over at double his height. Mr. Smiley walked to it. Without any Pokeballs, he was not able to catch it, but due to the fact that Regigigas was more intelligent than most other Pokemon, Mr. Smiley was able to befriend it, and he spoke to the Regigigas about his plans, and how they could team up to, among other things, take back what was rightfully his, the orange tulip. With a plan like this, Mr. Smiley nicknamed this Regigigas something more fitting for a being trying to obtain a plant. From then on, it was dubbed the Harvester. The server that followed this one was not like one seen before. It wasn't created by Dino. Instead, it was a server created by Doug himself in order to prepare the players for the harsh reality that was on its way. This server, being called Doug MM, contained many mods that were meant to make the game more challenging, and Doug wanted this to be the case. Yet most of the people who played were able to overcome the challenges in their first day of playing. This angered Doug, so he decided to step away, to think. Now that Dino has moved on from hosting servers, other people began to host them. One of these people being Corgi, who hosted a Pixelmon server named Corgi PM v2. This server included new starters, and also had the new mechanics added with the new versions of the game being added. Dino started by creating a small hut near a desert village, and over time expanding that hut into a giant desert mansion, where he lived for the remainder of the server. When that hut was first built though, there was an underground section. In this section were secret doors which led to other areas, eventually leading to different sections of the mansion. A room that no one found, however, is the most hidden one. It was the room that contained the orange tulip that was once in the white void created by Doug. It was really the physical body of Dining Table, which has been seen being thrown into lava at the end of Dino PM v2. But one of the properties of the orange tulips that have been infused with even a little power is that they are fireproof, as seen when Dining Chair was combined with the shiny Aron when it was being made. It was able to stay in the lava until the Aron casing could go around it. Everything seemed to be normal with the tulip underneath Dino's house, but it sat there for a great amount of time. As it was sitting there, Dino managed to host an event in which he got everyone on the server to come back to his house for a potluck, so they could eat some food and play some games in his pool. Then, he went down to his secret lab and caught Mewtwo. Sound familiar? If so, it is because this is almost exactly what happened to him in Dino PM, when Operation Cookout was in effect. The Mewtwo he caught at the potluck would go on to be named Mewpoo. This event caused a ripple in time and space that allowed something from a past Dino PM server to seep in quickly, before the window closed. This being that got in through the space-time ripple was none other than the Harvester. A week or so later, giant carrots started to fall from the sky on the Dino's mansion, which greatly confused him, making him think that it was all Corgi's doing. This confused him until a massive power outage occurred at his mansion, causing the local authorities to get involved. They closed up Dino's house and made sure no one could get inside. They found out that the carrots weren't carrots at all, but instead giant drills that would store what they dug up inside them and teleport it to an unknown determined location. In order to find out where these were being teleported to, they had to get inside of one of the drill carrots, power it, and see where it takes them. After doing so, the drill was overloaded and exploded midway as it was teleporting them. This led them near the location, but not the exact point. After walking north, they were able to see a massive carrot-shaped vessel jammed into the ground. They entered and saw that at the very front of the ship, there was a giant glass orb. Inside of this orb was none other than what the drills were teleporting. They found out the reason for the power outage, and it was due to the fact the dining table was drilled out from beneath Dino's mansion and teleported to this ship. As they found this out, the Harvester appeared in front of them. Further in the future, after months of silence, another Pixelmon server started, being named Corgi PM v3. In this server, Dino lived a pretty normal life, and he had a Bisharp named Cameron Durtax, which he later put in his box to replace with a shiny Dreadnought. Dino then went on to battle both Dialga and Palkia, yet Cameron Durtax was in the front of his team and killed them both. Dino was confused and didn't know how Cameron Durtax was in his team and managed to kill them both without his permission. At the same time that this was happening, he realized that the elevators at his house were not working. This is when everyone realized that the power source that was powering his entire island house was gone. This power source was the giant glass orb containing Dining Table from the ship owned by the Harvester. Dining Table was gone, and after Cameron Durtax killed both Palkia and Dialga, he was too shortly after. While looking for Cameron Durtax, Dino, Kyogre, and Gabriel all dug up a QR code underneath where Dining Table used to be. They scanned this QR code and were sent to a Discord server called Dino PM, yet it wasn't the one they knew. They put in the IP for the server, and were taken to a server with a flat landscape with nothing but one single building. This building being a bar, with a person at the front desk with a Dino Knight mask on. Cameron then showed up, and everyone listened to Cameron when he spoke to someone in a different universe than his, being revealed to be the Harvester. Cameron then showed that he has taken the admin power from Dino and is using it to bring the Harvester into Corgi PM v3. The Harvester remarked how dumb Dino is for not even noticing that Cameron Dirt Tax is really just an anagram for the admin extractor. Cameron was really just an upgraded version of the robot that kidnapped him in Dino PM v2, to now haunt him in Corgi PM v3. Dino, furious, then ran to Cameron and put him back into his Pokeball and instantly released him. As he released the admin extractor, the connection to the Harvester was cut, so what he was saying was cut off as well. After this, Dino got the orbs back in his gauntlet, including a few new ones, and everything returned to normal. For now.